Welcome to the Linux Guy Guru, and now your host, Jay Benjamin.
Hi, my name is Jay Benjamin. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Linux Guy Guru. Our topic for today's program is Command Line Quickstart. So let's begin this broadcast by me answering the following questions. What is the command line and how does it work? The Linux command line is one of the most powerful tools available for computer system administration and maintenance. The command line is also known as the terminal, shell, the console, the command prompt, and the command line interface, or CLI. For the purposes of this program, these terms will be interchangeable, although fine-grained differences do exist between them. The command line is an efficient way to perform complex tasks accurately and much more easily than it would seem at a first glance. Knowledge of the commands available to you and also how to string them together makes using Ubuntu easier for many tasks. Many of the commands were created by the GNU project as free software analogs to previously existing proprietary Unix commands. This program covers some of the basic commands that you need to know to be productive at the command line. You will learn how to get to the command line and discover some of the commands used to navigate the file system and perform basic operations with files, directories, and users. Our next program, Command Line Masterclass, will give you more of the advanced subjects and expand on some of the commands that we refer to in this program. The skills you'll discover in this program will help you get started using the command line with confidence. So what is the command line? If you spend any amount of time with experienced Linux users, you've heard them mention the command line. Some, especially those who have begun their journey in the Linux world using distributions that make it easy to complete many tasks using a graphical user interface, or GUI, as it is sometimes referred to, such as Ubuntu, might speak with trepidation about the mystery of the text interface. Others either praise its power or comment about doing something via the command line as if it is the most natural and obvious way to complete a task. It is not necessary for you to embrace either extreme. You might develop an affinity for the command line when performing some tasks and prefer the graphic user interface for others. This is where most users end up today. Some might say that you will never need to access the command line because Ubuntu offers a slew of graphical tools that enable you to configure more things on your system. Although the premise might be true most of the time, there are some good reasons to acquire a fundamental level of comfort with the command line that you should consider before embracing that view. Let me give you an example. Sometimes things go wrong and you might not have the luxury of a graphical interface to work with. In these situations, a fundamental understanding of the command line and its use can be a real lifesaver. Also, some tasks end up being far easier and faster to accomplish from the command line. More important though, you'll be able to make your way around the command line based system, which you will encounter if you ever work with a Linux server, because most Linux servers have no graphic user interface and all administration is done using a command line interface. Initially, you might be tempted to think of the command line as the product of some sort of black and arcane art, and in some ways it can appear to be extremely difficult and complicated to use. However, with a little perseverance, by the end of this program, you will start to feel comfortable using the command line, and you'll be ready to move on to our next program, Command Line Masterclass. This program will introduce you to commands that enable you to perform the following: routine tasks, logging in and out, changing passwords, listing and navigating file directories, also basic file management where you can create files and folders, copying and moving them around the file system, renaming them and deleting them. And then there is basic system management, shutting down and rebooting, changing file permissions, and reading man pages, which are entries for commands included as files already on your computer in a standardized manual format. The information in this program is valuable for individual users or system administrators who are new to Linux and are learning to use the command line for the first time. I would like to note here, those of you who have used a computer for many years will probably have come into contact with MS-DOS, in which case being presented with a black screen will fill you with a sense of nostalgia. But don't get too comfy. The command line in Linux is different from, and actually more powerful than, its distant MS-DOS cousin. Even cooler is that whereas MS-DOS skills are transferable only to other MS-DOS environments, the skills that you learned at the Linux command line can be transferred easily to other Linux and Unix-like operating systems such as Solaris, OpenBSD, FreeBSD, and even Mac OS X operating systems, which provides access to the terminal. So now let's get started accessing the command line. You can quickly access the terminal using the desktop menu option Terminal. This opens GNOME, GNOME-TERMINAL terminal, from which you can access the terminal while remaining in a graphic user environment. This time, the terminal appears as white text on an Orgarbine dark purple background. This is the most common method for accessing the terminal for most desktop users. The second most common way for graphical desktop users to access the command line is to press the key combination Ctrl+Alt+F1, after which Ubuntu switches to a black screen and a login prompt will appear, such as the one that I'm going to tell you. For example, it might say Ubuntu 16.04 UTOPIC SEYMOURTTRL, and below that it might say Seymour Login, or it might be your name, could be J Login. Your prompt might vary depending on the version of Ubuntu you're using and the method you're using to connect. In any event, at this prompt, type in your username and press enter. When you are prompted for your password, type it in and press enter. I'd like to note here, your password is not echoed back to you, which is a good idea. And why is it a good idea? Well, people are prevented from looking over your shoulder and seeing your screen input, and makes it difficult to guess that a 5-letter password might correspond to the user's spouse, first name, or simple things in general. After typing your username and pressing the enter key, you will ask for your password, which you type. Note that Ubuntu does not show any characters while you are typing your password in, and this is a good thing because it prevents any shoulder surfers from seeing what you've typed or the length of the password. Or, if you've watched the movie Edward Snowden, you'll understand that there could be eyes in the sky watching everything that you do. Navigating through the system at the command line can get confusing at times, especially when a directory name occurs in several places. Fortunately, Linux includes a simple command that tells you exactly where you are in the file system. It's easy to remember because the command line is just an abbreviation of the present working directory, so you type pwd at any point to get the full path of your location. For example, typing pwd after following these instructions shows /home/your username, meaning that you are currently in your home directory. Using the pwd command can save you a lot of frustration when you have changed your directory half a dozen times and have lost track of where you are. And let's talk about logging out. Use the exit or logout command or Control+D to exit your session. You will then return to the login prompt. If you use virtual consoles, remember to exit each console before leaving your PC. Otherwise, someone could easily sit down and use your account. And now I'll discuss logging in and out from a remote computer. Although you can happily log onto your computer and act as a local login, you can also log into your computer via a network connection from a remote computer. Linux-based operating systems provide a number of remote access commands you can use to log into other computers on your local area network, or LAN, that is sometimes referred to, or your wide area network, a WAN, or the internet. I'd like to note here that you must have an account on the remote computer, and the remote computer must be configured to support remote logins, otherwise you won't be able to log in. The best and most secure way to log into a remote Linux computer is to use SSH, the Secure Shell Client. Your login and session are encrypted while you work on the remote computer. The SSH client featured has many command line options that can be simply used with the name or IP address of the remote computer. The first time you connect with a remote computer using SSH, Linux displays the remote computer's encrypted identity key and asks you to verify the connection. After you type yes and press enter, you are warned that the remote computer's identity key has been entered in a file known as host under the SSH directory in your home directory. You are also prompted to enter your password. After entering your password, you can work on the remote computer, which you can confirm by noticing the change prompt that now uses the name of the remote computer on which you are working. Again, because you are using SSH, everything you enter on the keyboard in communication with the remote computer is encrypted. When you log out, you return to the shell on your computer. Now we'll discuss user accounts. A good place to start is with the concept of user-based security. For the most part, only two types of people access the system as users, although there are other accounts that run programs and processes. Here we are talking about accounts that represent human beings rather than something like an account created for a web server process. Most people have a regular user account. These users can change anything that is specific to their accounts, such as the wallpaper on the desktop, their personal preferences, and the configuration for a program when it is run by them using their account. Also note that the emphasis is on anything that is specific to their accounts. This type of user cannot make system-wide changes that could affect other users. And I would like to note here, in order to make system-wide changes, you need to use super user privileges, such as can be done using the account you created when you started Ubuntu for the first time, which was installing Ubuntu and post-installation configuration. With super user privileges, you have access to the entire system and can carry out any task, even destructive ones. To help prevent this from happening, this user does not run with these powers enabled at all times, but instead spends most of the time as a regular user. To use super user privileges from the command line, you need to preface the command you want to execute with another command, example, sudo or super user do, followed by a space and the command you want to run. When you press enter after typing the remaining command, you are prompted for your password, which you should type in and then press the enter key. As usual, on any Unix-based system, the password does not appear on the screen while you are typing it as a security measure, in case someone is watching over your shoulder. Ubuntu then carries out the command, but with super user privileges. So let me give you an example of a destructive nature of working as a super user in the age-old sudo space rm space -rf space /, which erases everything on your hard drive. If you enter a command using super user do as a regular user who does not have an account with super user privileges, an error message appears and nothing happens because the command will not run. We recommend that you do not try this particular command as a test. If you enter this command using an account with super user privileges, you will soon find yourself starting over with a fresh installation and hoping you have a current backup of all your data. And you might need to be especially careful when using your super user privileges, otherwise you might do irreparable damage to your system. However, the ability to work as a super user is fundamental to a healthy Linux system and should not be feared, but rather respected, even while used only with focused attention. Without this ability, you could not install new software, edit system configuration files, and do a large number of important administrative tasks. And by the way, you have already been performing operations with a super user privilege from the graphic user interface if you have ever been asked to enter your password to complete a specific task, such as installing software updates. The difference is that most graphical interfaces limit the options that users have and make it a little more difficult to do some of the big, disruptive tasks, even the ones that are incredibly useful. And Ubuntu works slightly different from many other Linux distributions. If you study some other Linux distributions, especially older and more traditional ones, you will hear about a specific user account called root, which is a super user account. In those distributions, instead of typing in sudo or super user do before a command while using a regular user account with super user privileges, you can log into the root account and simply issue the command without entering a password, at least by default. In almost all cases, super user do can be installed and configured in those distributions. In those cases, you can tell when you're using the root account at the command line because you'll see a # as the command line prompt in the place of the $. In Ubuntu, the root account is disabled by default because forcing regular users with super user privileges to type a specific command every time they want to execute a command as a super user should have the benefit of making them carefully understand and consider what they are doing when they use that power. It is easy to forget to log out of a root account, and entering a powerful command while logged into root can be catastrophic. However, if you are more experienced and comfortable with the more traditional method of using super user privileges and want to enable the root account, you can use the command sudo passwd when prompted. It'll ask you to enter your user password to confirm that your user account has super user privileges. You will then ask for a new Unix password, which will be the password for the root account, so make sure you remember it. You are also prompted to repeat the password in case you've made any mistakes. After you've typed it in and press enter, the root account is active, and you'll find out how to switch to root later on. And I'd like to discuss reading documentation. Although you learn the basics of using Ubuntu in this program, you need time and practice to master and troubleshoot more complex aspects of the Linux operating system and your distribution. As with any operating system, you can expect to encounter some problems or perplexing questions as you continue to work with Linux. The first place to turn for help with these issues is the documentation included with your system. If you cannot find the information you need there, check Ubuntu's website. Using the man pages, you'll be able to learn more about a command or program. Use the man command followed by the name of the command. Man pages are stored in places like /usr/share/man and /usr/local/share/man. But you don't need to know all that. To read a man page, such as the one for the rm command, use the command line like this: man space rm. After you press enter, the less command, a Linux command known as a pager, displays the man pages. The less command is a text browser, and you can use this to scroll forward and backwards and even sideways to the document. To learn more about the command, type the letters in to get help using the / to enter a string, or press Q to quit. No one can remember everything. Even the best and most experienced system administrators use man pages regularly. Looking up complicated information is easy because this frees you from having to recall it at all, enabling you to focus on your task rather than punishing yourself for not remembering the syntax. I will note here, nearly all the 100 of commands included with Linux each have a man page. However, some do not and may only have simple pages. You may also use the info command to read more detailed information about some commands or as a replacement for others. For example, to learn more about info, which has a regular extension manual page, use the command line info like this: info space info. Use the arrow keys to navigate to the document and press Q when you want to quit reading. And a word of caution: before editing any important system or software service configuration file, make a backup copy. Then make sure to launch your text editor with line wrapping disabled. If you edit a configuration file without disabling line wrapping, you could insert spurious carriage returns and line feeds into its contents, causing the configured service to fail when restarting. By convention, nearly all configuration files that are formatted are for 80-character text width, but this is not always the case. By default, the VI and Emacs editors don't use line wraps, so be careful when making any changes. And I'll also note here, in order for a user to use superuserdo, the user account must belong to the superuserdo group and also be listed in the /etc/superdoers file. If both conditions are met, the user will be permitted to temporarily use root powers for specific commands that are used at the command line by that user account by prefacing the command with the word superuserdo. And fixing any problems that you encounter requires the use of root powers. This is an obvious problem because if the superuserdo is not working, then the account does not have access to root. To fix it, we must gain root access, and you can do this by booting into recovery mode using the following steps. 1. Hold down the shift key while the computer is booting. 2. When the grub menu page appears, use the arrow keys on your keyboard to scroll to the entry that ends with recovery mode and press enter to select it. 3. When the boot process finishes, you have several options. Select the menu entry for root, which is described as drop to root shell prompt. You are now at the command line with full root access to the computer. And 4. Ubuntu mounts file systems as read-only by default in recovery mode, so you need to remount the root file system. After your fix is complete, exit the root command line by typing in the word exit. You return to the recovery mode menu, then select resume, described as resume normal boot, to finish and return to a normal boot. When the boot completes, you should be able to use superuserdo commands correctly again. And now we'll discuss creating users. When a Linux system administrator creates a user, an entry is, for example, /etc/PASSWD for the user is created. The system also creates a directory labeled with the user's username in the home directory. For example, if you create a user named Heather, the user's home directory is /home/Heather. Use the add user command along with the user's name to quickly create a user. After creating a user, you must also create the user's initial password with the PASSWD command. Enter the new password twice. If you do not create an initial password for a new user, the user cannot log in. The add user command has many command line options. The command line can be used to set policies and dates for the new user's password, assign a login shell, assign group membership, and another aspect of a user's account. You can also delete users using the DELUSER command to delete users from your system. This command removes a user's entry in the system's /etc/PASSWD file. You should also use the commands remove all files and remove home option to remove all the user's files and directories, such as the user's mail spool file under the var spool mail. If you do not use the remove home option, you have to manually delete the user's directory under the home along with the user's /var/spool/mail queue. Shutting down the system. Use the shutdown command to shut down your system. The shutdown command has a number of different command line options, such as shutting down at a predetermined time. But the fastest way to cleanly shut down Linux is to use the or halt options followed by the word now or the numerical 0. And a tip I'll give you is do not shut down your computer if you suspect that intruders have infiltrated your system. Instead, disconnect the machine from any or all the networks and make a backup copy of your hard drives. You might also want to keep the machine running to examine the contents of memory and to examine system files. Exceptions to this are when the system contains only trivial data files and non-essential services, such as a personal computer that is only used to run a web browser, and when you have no intention of trying to track down what an intruder might have changed, either to repair the damages or try to catch them using computer forensics, but rather plan to merely wipe everything clean and rebuild or reinstall the system from scratch. Well, that's our show for today. Our next program will be a continuation of today's program, entitled Command Line Masterclass. And in that broadcast, you'll learn about user accounts, managing groups, managing users, managing passwords, and system administration privileges and duties. In closing, if you've enjoyed listening to this program, please tell a friend. As I've said before a number of times in this program, knowledge is power. I encourage everyone listening to learn Linux, and it is my mission to make the world better informed about free operating software. If you've enjoyed this program, leave us a comment. If you'd like to contact the show, you can email us at linuxguyguru@gmail.com. You can also check out our website at linuxguy.guru. We have videos on the website which will help you learn more about Linux. And should you be in the New York City area and want to have your personal computer converted from either a Microsoft or an Apple operating system, we can make it possible with a variety of Linux operating system distributions. The possibilities are endless. Till next time, your host, Jay Benjamin, logging out.